It's that time of the year where hay fever wreaks complete and utter havoc on me. But that's not the only thing I'm annoyed about this morning. When will these so called pundits do some research, do some analysis, rather than coming up with lazy clickbait stories in order to make us, and yes, I'm biting, the Arsenal fans react? We're going to get into that as we continue to deal with what happened against PSG the other night on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hope you're all good. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. It's a glorious and sunny day here in North London. It's supposed to be the hottest day of the year. I've even got the shorts on. That's how you know we're maybe, hopefully, turning a corner. I mean, I haven't looked at the weather, but knowing Great Britain, it'll probably be pissing down with rain all week next week. So you got to lap it up. You got to make the most of it. But yeah, here we are. We're here to continue to deal with some of the fallout from Arsenal's 1-0 defeat at the hands of Paris Saint-Germain. It's only the first leg. It's only half-time. There's still lots to play for. There's still an opportunity there for Arsenal to qualify for the UEFA Champions League final. And I know there was a feeling of deflation inside Emirates Stadium on Tuesday night. I know that people are struggling in a lot of cases to see how we overcome a side that for 30 minutes at least looked head and shoulders above us. I know it's difficult to kind of maintain that positive mindset because even if you're a glass half full kind of person, which I like to think generally I am, the nerves weigh you down, don't they? And so you do feel stressed and frustrated and almost desperate to see Arsenal get what they need to get over in Paris to book their place in the final, which it's where we all want to be. You're in the final, you got a great chance of winning the thing. And if you could win the thing in what's been overall a difficult season for Arsenal, I mean, that would just wipe away all the hurt, wouldn't it, of the last 7-8 months? I know it would for me. So look, we got loads and loads to break down and to get into. We're going to continue to react to the game because I think sometimes it's important that you take stock again, sort of maybe 48 hours later when the emotions have subsided a little bit, when you've calmed down a little bit, because then you can form more rational opinions. And so over the course of the next week or so, you'll be able to carry those more rational opinions rather than the maybe knee-jerk ones that some of us, myself included, develop. You can't help it, but, you do develop those over the course of, the first few hours after an event and an occasion like that. I do want to say a few hellos to some of you in the live chat. There's plenty of you with us. But I guess the gist of today's podcast is not necessarily, what went wrong from a tactical standpoint. It's more a focus on some of the reaction from the wider media, from the so-called pundits. And I say that because some of them are honestly stealing a living, in my opinion. And I don't care if people take offense to that. I think we're in this weird place with punditry right now where it's become more about sound bites and clickbait than it has about good quality analysis. And hey, listen, maybe there's a new generation of football fans coming through, younger than me, that enjoy that kind of thing, enjoy the banter, if you like. But that's not what I want. When I pay a small fortune to access TV channels with the broadcast rights to these games, I want good, solid, insightful, and well thought out analysis. And I think one of the pundits, ex-players that you get that from is Cesc Fabregas. I think he's been great. And forget his Arsenal connection. Put that to one side a minute. I thought it was great during the European Championships as well. I thought he was fantastic. But unfortunately, we get a load of ex-players wheeled out that rather than having any sort of relationship with Arsenal have been enemies, if you like, of Arsenal and are now being wheeled out. And we're expecting them to bring balanced and insightful analysis to a game that they clearly, have some sort of preference over. And listen, if you're going to do that, if you're going to bring, I don't know, an ex PSG player on for the PSG Arsenal game, bring an Arsenal 1-2 to balance it out. But then you start bringing in like Wayne Rooney, ex-Man United. Then you bring in Daniel Sturridge, ex-Liverpool and Chelsea. And it's like, what are we doing here? I don't really get what we're doing here. Anyway, we'll get into that in just a second. Let me say my hellos because there's lots of you with us. Big hello to Afsar. John says, good morning, Harry. Don't you just love the meltdowns by so-called fans and so-called creators? As some people say, a kick in the arse is only 6 inches from a clap on the back. Muppets, the lot of them. Halo says, good morning. Hope you're doing good. There will always be critics, even if you win everything, but the devil is in the details. Those details finally adding up to winning a major trophy. Samus says, morning all, we aren't favourites in any game to most people, but a judge the harshest when we lose. Agree. Mitch says, when everyone wants you to fail, they make a mountain out of a molehill. It's 1-0. We have Partey back. Let's get excited. Thank you to Afsar for your very, very kind words, mate. Really, really appreciate that. TalkSport's dedicated Arsenal show, Inside Gooners, is out. There's a new episode that we dropped it yesterday evening. Myself, Perry Grove, Simon Collins from The Standard, and Julien Laurent were on. So go and check that out. If you follow me on social media, you'll see I posted the link. So go and check it out. Okay, let's get into some of this then, right? So look, I'm okay. In fact, I'm welcoming of good, insightful, well thought out analysis, even if it paints my team in a bad light. If you sat there as a pundit and went, post the PSG game, you went, Arsenal had no structure at points in that game, particularly in the early stages. They tried to press PSG, but it didn't work. They couldn't get near them. They couldn't get the ball. And in their desperation to press and try and close PSG down, they ended up wandering out of their positions at times, particularly in the midfield area, I thought. As a result of that, PSG, with their really good technical ability, were able to play through Arsenal's press, get themselves into good spaces, good positions, and they completely controlled the game for the first 25 to 30 minutes. That is negative in terms of what it says about Arsenal. That is criticism of Arsenal, but I'm okay with that. You know why? Because that reflects what actually happened in the game. But then you have to be fair and you have to say Arsenal made a tweak, Arsenal made an adjustment. And there's been a lot of debate around what exactly that adjustment was. And they were able to get a foothold in the game. And although PSG still posed a threat because they are PSG and they've got some fantastic talents and brilliant, brilliant footballers within their ranks, Arsenal were able to make sure that they remained in the game and limited the damage to just one, having had a couple of opportunities of their own, really good ones, that Gianluigi Donnarumma managed to keep out. That's fair analysis of what happened. If you want to go into the minutiae of it, if you want to look at it and go, I don't think Declan Rice played the 6 role in the way that we needed him to play it, or I think he went wandering a bit too much, which is something I said in the podcast that we did yesterday. If that's your opinion, that is also fine. Now, you don't have to agree with me on that. There'll be other people out there that say Martin Odegaard went ghosting. I've seen him called Martin Ghostergaard. I don't like that crap because I think he's a very, very good player, really important player to this team. He's going through a difficult period, and I believe that he needs our love and support in order for him to turn a corner and turn it back around. It's as if people have forgotten how good he's been over the last couple of seasons. Hasn't he been our player of the season for the last 2 campaigns? He's been phenomenal. Yet people want to, just ignore all of that. It's as if it didn't happen. Throw it out the window. Martin Odegaard's turned crap all of a sudden. But even if that was your view, he shouldn't be captain, blah, 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 all of that stuff. It's analysis based on the game. It's analysis based on the football. And whether I agree with it or not, I can tolerate it. I can take it. Do I think that kind of chat is hyperbolic? For sure. But I can understand where the sentiment comes from. If you want to even go back to January and say, oh man, if Arsenal had a striker against PSG, which they didn't get in January, then we would have had a greater chance of creating more chances and therefore inflicting some damage on them. If you want to go down any of those paths, I ain't got a problem with it. I might not always agree with you, and I might feel at times that you're reaching for stuff, and I might feel at times that some of the criticism is disproportionate to what we saw, or a little bit, agenda driven based on previous arguments and debates that we've had. But what really wound me up over the course of the last 24 hours was reading the countless pieces, the countless articles, the countless hit pieces, if you like, on the Arsenal fans. What are we doing here? Has punditry got so bad? Has the level dropped so much that we've got zero knowledge around Paris Saint-Germain, one of the prominent teams in European football, led by one of the best coaches in European football? And we have so little knowledge of them and so little understanding of what they did tactically to cause Arsenal problems, how some of their individuals contributed to the PSG machine, if you like, dominating the first 30 minutes and getting their noses in front of the tie. Have we got such little knowledge of them that we're going to just resort to having a go at the Arsenal fans? Because it's one of two things. Either you're playing a game because you know that criticizing the Arsenal fans is going to spark a reaction, it's going to generate clicks, or your punditry is not good enough. It's one or the other. So either admit that you're playing a game, admit that you're doing something for clicks, or acknowledge that your punditry is not good enough, because it's only going to be one of those two things. PSG are a fantastic side. Why not get people in the punditry positions that know a little bit about PSG, that can talk about PSG, that can talk about the game, that can give us, some insight. I mean, we spoke to Julien Laurens yesterday on Inside Gooners, the TalkSport show, and he was fantastic. And he's one of the best out there, covering all football, really, but particularly when you kind of drill down into the kind of specifics of Paris Saint-Germain. He was fantastic. I was enjoying listening to him. I was listening to someone give me insight and provide me with something that I don't know, educating me. That's what a pundit is supposed to do, not have digs at people for cheap clicks. So I've actually got a problem with us calling some of these people pundits now, because I don't think they are pundits anymore. I think they're social media influencers. That's what it feels like they've become. It's crazy. Have we got such a kind of snobbery in this country around sort of the Premier League and its perceived superiority to every other league that we now just ignore all other football until it comes to a tie where an English team takes on one of the so-called big boys from Europe? And then we, because we've done nothing over the course of the year, because we've not paid any attention, we have to find cheap wins in terms of our commentary around these games to mask the fact that our knowledge is so poor and so bad. That people keep saying the Premier League's the best league in the world, blah, 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 blah. And to a degree, I think there's obviously a semblance of truth in that, because the money in the Premier League means that more teams can be competitive than maybe you'd get in some of the other major European leagues. But I watched Barcelona against Inter last night, and I haven't enjoyed a Premier League game like that all season. It was sensational. These were two top-end teams, right? Top-end team in Spain, top-end team in Italy. And what did you get? You got a festival of football. You got two contrasting styles, but some unbelievable entertainment, moments of brilliance. Started from the beginning, Thuram with the back heel. Denzel Dumfries with an unbelievable volley from close range to make it 2-0 to Inter. Lamine Yamal producing unbelievable bits of brilliance in order to get Barcelona back into the game. And then a brilliantly worked equalizer. Inter then go 3-2 up. Okay, Barcelona's defending wasn't great at times, but then Rafinha pulls a brilliant goal out of the bag. If people still believe that, and this is not a dig at Liverpool, by the way, but if people still believe that Liverpool and Arsenal and Manchester City in their current iterations are as good as this Barcelona side when they're in full flow, or this PSG side, sorry, guys, even the Inter side in terms of their organization and how they go about things, then sorry, that is the classic case of Premier League snobbery. And Premier League snobbery has been around for a long time, but it's meant that we're very, very tunnel vision in our analysis. So what does that then create? Well, that creates an environment whereby you turn up to a game, Arsenal against PSG, as that's what we're talking about today, with the expectation that Arsenal are going to blow PSG away. And it doesn't happen. Why doesn't it happen? Because PSG are just as good, if not a better team than Arsenal. But we overlooked that in the build-up. We overlooked that because nobody actually paid attention to PSG closely enough. Nobody actually took into consideration in their analysis what it is that they do very, very well and how that can be a problem for us. Remember, like, we've got an 18-year-old kid playing at left back who's been sensational, by the way. And we've got far from our first choice centre back playing alongside William Saliba. You know, because had Ben White been completely fit, maybe Timber went in there and Ben White goes at right back. Had Calafiori been available, maybe he'd have gone in there. Like, it doesn't feel like Kivior was kind of top of the pecking order, but circumstances have dictated that he plays. And again, a bit like Miles Lewis-Skelly, he's been great, and I'm not being critical of him. But the point I'm trying to make is that why is it so outrageous for some people to just accept that PSG are a bloody good team? And why can't we come away from a game like the other night and say, they're a really good side, but actually we managed to fix some of the issues that we had. We know what those issues are, which puts us in a position to at least try and rectify those going into the second leg. It's only halftime. It's only 1-0. And rather than having swipes at the Arsenal fans, and we're going to come into some specific examples of this in a minute, why don't we talk about what happened on the pitch? Because that's what we turn up to see. I don't know about you guys. I don't turn up to the Emirates to look at the tifos. I turn up at the Emirates to watch the game on the pitch because I'm a football guy. Now, the tifo stuff, I said my piece on the pod yesterday. I thought the tifo was underwhelming. I loved the kind of make it happen banner opposite the tunnel. I thought that was fantastic. Loved that. I loved the red and white cards against Real Madrid. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was stunning. Couldn't really understand why we didn't do that again. The tifo was underwhelming, and I was asked to comment on it yesterday for BBC Sport. They did a piece on it, but listen, I gave my comments and I gave my thoughts on it, and you know, that's fine. But is it as big a deal as some people are making it out to be? I understand it's a talking point. I understand it's a debate and it's a discussion, but that discussion should not supersede what happened on the pitch. And that's the bit that I'm really getting frustrated with. For those of you that might be interested, what did I say on the tifo? And obviously, I gave my reaction on the pod yesterday. I said, look, it was underwhelming. I said, if you're the football club, you gotta do more. If you take it out of the hands of the supporters, you got to do more. But I was reluctant to say it was the club's fault or Ashburton's Army's fault or whatever, because I didn't know what went down. You know, there was claims online that I've since found to be not completely accurate. Having done a little bit of digging, that the Ashburton Army came up with this proposal, took it to Arsenal Football Club, and Arsenal Football Club went no, and that was it. Like, I've done some digging, and I don't believe that was the case now. But this is what I said on the BBC Sport website. I think the fans were hoping to see something with a bit more of a wow factor, given there was lots of talk online with regards to some more elaborate and striking designs. You can understand why some felt underwhelmed. Tifos on the continent tend to be more creative and really can set the scene ahead of a huge occasion. Fan groups in particular, those known as ultras, normally have a big input, which naturally leads to a higher rate of fan satisfaction. But this is something that we don't do well enough in English football generally. If as a club, though, you're going to take it upon yourselves to both plan and execute such displays, you've got to deliver something with far more imagination than that. So I was critical of it because I thought it could have been a lot better. But I mean, am I going to sit and bang on about this for the next week? Like, I'm bringing it up now because that tifo is the subject of so much of the criticism that's come our way post-game. I beg your pardon. And I just can't understand why. Let's delve into some of the comments then, and then we'll get some of your thoughts and we'll get some of your questions from the live chat as well. Just a quick reminder, though, if you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video. It really, really does help. Oh, my God, hay fever's getting me. I beg your pardon. Normally when I sneeze 3 times, so there might be another one coming, just to warn you. I'm trying to hit the mute button as quickly as I can to save you getting a blast in your earphones. But the reason I'm talking about it today, and I'm talking about the fans and the atmosphere, is because that has been at the crux of so much of the criticism that we've received from some of these so-called pundits. And I can't really, if I'm being completely honest with you, understand why. it's not the most important thing. It's a talking point. It's a discussion. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have brought it up yesterday on the pod myself. But I don't think it's anywhere near as big a deal as some people would have you believe. It feels like another stick to beat Arsenal with. Wayne Rooney. Let's start with his punditry. We'll delve into his comments right after this.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
You heard the man. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Like and subscribe. Should we just have a quick look at where we're at in terms of likes at the moment? What have we got? Let's check it out. We've got only 44 likes on the board. Come on, guys. There's no reason why we shouldn't have over 100. It really, really does help. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or wherever, please do leave us a review as well. That's really, really important. Also, okay, should we start with Wayne Rooney then? So Wayne Rooney couldn't help but let his Manchester United bias come through and came out with a daft comment like, this is when it always falls away for Arsenal at this part of the season. We haven't been in the Champions League final for years. What the hell are you talking about? Semi-final, I beg your pardon. We haven't been anywhere near a Champions League semi-final for years. We haven't. Not since 2008, 2009. Our season in terms of Europe normally falls away much earlier than this. So already that comment is a load of nonsense. And that is your Manchester United allegiance is coming through. Now, I don't pay a small fortune, as I mentioned earlier, to watch coverage of a game where I've got to listen to a Manchester United sympathetic or sympathizer, Manchester United sympathizer is the term I was looking for, criticize Arsenal. Now, listen, Wayne Rooney was a fantastic football player, and he's recently been a manager. If Wayne Rooney wants to take his Manchester United hat off for a minute and provide some actual analysis around the game and what went wrong and all the rest of it, I'm all ears, and I'd love to listen. But if he's just going to have sly, stupid digs to make clickbait while assessing Arsenal's performance purely through a Manchester United lens, I ain't interested. Then he said something about the fans. He was like, oh, the fans. What was his exact comment? Hold on, I'll find it now, because it was basically along the lines of the Arsenal fans not being loud enough. And this is another thing that really wound me up, because this idea that the Arsenal fans just came, here we go. For Arsenal, I was a bit disappointed with how they played. Disappointed with the fans as well. The fans against Real Madrid really pushed the team. I thought tonight they were a bit subdued. Why are you bringing the fans into it? Like, you have been in football long enough to know that an atmosphere can be an absolute fever pitch and a goal can change that. Because that's what happened. The atmosphere inside Emirates Stadium, up until PSG scored, was probably the best it's ever been. PSG score, it knocks the wind out of your sails. Okay, people would argue that should be temporary. Fine. But then you go on to be completely dominated for the next half an hour of the game, leading to nerves, leading to frustration, leading to concern among the Arsenal fans. They're not going to stand there singing, "We've got Super Mick Arteta," when they're being schooled and outplayed by PSG, which is what happened. You've got to understand how football works, man. You've been in the game long enough to understand that. Now, if I know that, if you know that, how on earth does Wayne Rooney not know that? And that's the kind of thing that really, really irritates me, because, it's taking aim at a group of people that are not to be blamed, really, and don't really have much of, look, being the 12th man, it can help and it can support and it can drive people on. But that's not the reason that we were dominated by PSG for as long as we were in the first half an hour or so of that game. And then I read all sorts of other nonsense, because people get on they listen to this stuff. And even if they don't believe they're being influenced, subconsciously they are, and they start to jump on bandwagons, right? So, for example, we know that there's a lot of Arsenal fans out there that are not happy with the current ticketing policy. Okay. I've always said around ticketing that I don't know how you please everyone. Okay. Because before it was, let's open the tickets up to silver members and we'll put them on sale at a certain time. And then certain fans would log on at the right on that hour, they'd buy their ticket and they'd get tickets for a lot of games. But then you had other silver members that for whatever reason, maybe they were working or whatever, couldn't log on at that time, would have to log on after work or whatever, or at different times, they live in a different time zone. And then they'd go, well, I don't stand a chance because I can't log on at that specific time. So what did they do? They put a ballot system in place, which theoretically should be a fairer system. But nobody likes the ballot. And so whatever you do, I don't think with ticketing, when the demand is as high as it is right now, I don't think you can win. So I do have some sympathy for the club in that sense. Okay, look at the PSG away game. I've got friends that are on 55 plus away credits and who missed out. Now that sucks, man. That's really, really horrible. You've traveled up and down the country for years and across Europe for years to accrue that level of away credits, only for you to miss out on the semi-final second leg. I understand it must feel like a punch in the gut. But for those people, I've got a lot of sympathy because they are the ones that have been pumping money in left, right, and center, going here, going there, going everywhere. Now, that's not to say I don't have sympathy for the silver members. I was a silver member for a long time before I was able to get my own season ticket. I get it, right? It is frustrating. I get it. It all comes from the fact that there's a demand. There's a huge demand. And whatever you do when there's a huge demand, you cannot please and you cannot satisfy everyone. I'm not saying that the ticketing policy is perfect, by the way. There's changes I would make to it. There's adjustments I would make to it. But that's just me. My point is, and the reason I started talking about ticketing and went on this sort of this tangent is because I saw some people, having listened to the likes of Mr. Rooney, go online and go, well, the reason the atmosphere was shit against PSG, nothing to do with the fact that we were being scored and dominated. Instead, it's because of the ballot system. Yeah, it's the ballot system. The irony of that ridiculous notion is simply this. The vast majority of those that were inside the Emirates Stadium on Tuesday night against Paris Saint-Germain in the first leg of our UEFA Champions League semi-final were season ticket holders. The same people that were in attendance for the game against Real Madrid. How many season ticket holders do we have? 35, 40K? Might even be slightly more. I don't know. But it's definitely a big proportion of the stadium capacity. So the idea that a few people that got tickets in the ballot are the ones that, have sort of contributed to the atmosphere being lesser, it's a ridiculous notion. It's a nonsensical comment. And that's my issue with some of the analysis around Arsenal. And crap punditry basically fuels that type of shit. Gabriel Agbonlahor, who I really like as a person, by the way, but I completely disagree with this. He said the Arsenal fans were embarrassing and that the Tifo was embarrassing. You don't like the Tifo, so what? Call it out. You don't like it. You think they could have done more. I think we generally, as a fan group, share that point of view, right? But is it the be all and end all? No. And anybody who's played the game, Gabby Agbonlahor's played the game at Premier League level. He's Villa's record goal scorer in the Premier League. I don't think Gabby Agbonlahor's performances on the pitch for Aston Villa over the course of that long period of time were influenced positively or negatively by any tifos or any displays that he saw pre-game. So it's like people that should know better are actively choosing to make mountains out of molehills because it drives cheap clicks and traffic. The Telegraph. I don't really necessarily expect this from the Telegraph. But like everybody, they've probably felt the need to jump on the bandwagon because unfortunately with the huge volume of fickle supporters out there and people that are just looking for a cheap laugh, these pieces seem to work. This is the headline on a piece that came out in the Telegraph. Arsenal learned the hard way their fans are no match for European ultras. There isn't a fan base in England that is a match for European ultras. I can tell you that as someone that's been and watched games abroad for a number of years. There isn't a fan base in the country. You all bang on about the atmosphere at Liverpool or what it's been like at Emirates at certain times under Mikel Arteta's tenure. And it's been good, yeah. But it's been good by English standards. Now go to the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. Now go to San Siro. Now go to, any of these really atmospheric grounds. Even Lens in France when we went last year in the Champions League. Unbelievable, mind-blowing atmosphere. We don't do the pyrotechnics. We don't have the same coordination in our chanting. Our chants are not intimidating in the way that the ultras from other countries seem to come across. We sing chants to Shakira songs. We are not that way inclined in this country. And it's one of the things I've always said that, in my opinion, lets English football down a little bit. There's so many positives. Yes, there's lots that you can say when it comes to English football that is really, really good and really, really great. But the support is nowhere near the same level as what it is in different countries. Now, when I say the support is not at the same level, I don't mean in terms of the loyalty. The loyalty is there. We travel, we spend money, we do all of that stuff, but it's different. It's different. You go to Spain, for example, and you might not get many away fans. That's partly a league thing, but that's partly because generally these people don't travel as much in the league games. There's a lot of stuff that you need to factor in here. But again, like comparing Emirates Stadium with a small pocket of PSG ultras, it's just a stupid comparison to make. And so again, we're back at that point where we are prioritizing cheap clicks and traffic over everything else. I'm fed up of it. I am. Focus on the football. Talk about the football. Give me some tactical insight. Give me an understanding as to why you think, as an ex-professional footballer, that PSG were able to control the game the way they did in the first half an hour. What did we do wrong? I'm all for that kind of stuff because I want to sit and think about it. I want my opinions to be informed opinions. I want lots of different angles. I want lots of different perspectives. What I don't want to do is scroll through and read stuff about tifos all day and fan displays all day or hear stupid comparisons made. Like comparing a small pocket of European ultras to your general English football fan, it's stupid. It's not a comparison. It's apples and oranges. It doesn't work. It does not work. Anyway, let's take another really, really short pause. And when we come back, we're going to focus on some of your questions and comments from the live chat. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and if you're listening on audio, you know the drill. Did I already say that? I can't even remember. I'm all over the place. Too angry this morning with some of the coverage around Arsenal Football Club at the moment. Right, let's do your questions, your thoughts, your comments right after the break. Morning, Gooners. Welcome back. Okay. Let's take some of your thoughts from the chat. Look, I highlighted a couple because this is the kind of stuff that you get when you call out the nonsense. Gatman Stav says, nobody criticizes Arsenal on Harry's watch. I spent pretty much a whole podcast yesterday criticizing Arsenal. And I did it at the start of this one. I talked about why tactically I thought we got it wrong. I talked about why, from a footballing perspective, I thought we allowed PSG as good. They're great and they're fantastic. And it's not just us allowing it, but we certainly contributed to them being able to control the game in the way they did. I just don't think it's fair to put that on the fans. I don't think it's fair. I always get told, oh, with your job, you've got an agenda and, you need to say certain things. At the end of the day, I'm a paying fan like everybody else, right? I'm a season ticket holder. Where was I on Tuesday night? I was standing in block 6 with friends and enjoying the game and taking the game in like everybody else. I paid for my ticket like everybody else. I'm entitled to have a fan opinion as well. And if I sort of take my journalistic work hat off for a minute, as a fan, I feel annoyed by the fact that people have decided to come after us over crap that in the grand scheme of things doesn't really make a difference. Sheila says, what do you think we do differently next week? Well, I think there's a few lessons that we need to learn from next week. And I think we've got the it's not a benefit or an advantage, but I think if you struggle the way we did in the first half an hour and then manage to find the solution within the game, what that means is that you're a problem solver, first of all. And I've always said that about Mikel Arteta. But now with a few days, a week, you've got no excuse really not to find a solution to that particular problem. Now, that's not to say that PSG aren't going to change it. That's not to say that PSG aren't going to do something differently, in which case you have to readjust and you have to go again. But I think it was about the midfield balance more than anything else for me. And I think it was about the lack of a presence up front. And obviously, Thomas Partey coming back into the team, that's a solution for us. And it's a solution that we don't have to think too hard about. Naturally, the balance improves with Thomas Partey coming back into the picture. So I think that's kind of where the sort of crux of it is. And that's what we want to see. And it's how we think we're going to move forward and progress and all the rest of it. And hopefully give ourselves a fighting chance in the second leg. But I think the solution is one that has been put on a platter for us a little bit. And I do think if I'm saying that, then I have to acknowledge that the problem was one that maybe was a little bit out of our hands as well. Do I think we could have adjusted in order to try and make that problem less of an issue? For sure. And I've talked about that quite a bit. But I think it's about readdressing that midfield balance. And I think it's about having that presence up front so we can play in a way that we did against Real Madrid. And that will hopefully stand us in good stead. Look, it's not over, man. It's 1-0. It's 1-0. That's it. Just think about the fact that we went to the Bernabeu 3-0 up and we were shitting ourselves. Think about it that way. So they've got a 1-0 advantage. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world at all. Let's take some more of your thoughts. Augustine asks if I think we were missing Partey. Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I've just alluded to that, so I won't repeat myself, but for sure. Ayan says, do you think Arteta platforms Saka to the fullest to be the star of the team like Slot did with Salah? I think Arteta demands more work rate out of his winger on that right side than Mo Salah does. Than Arne Slot does of Mo Salah, but Mo Salah's outputs are better. So it's about risk versus reward. If you feel that, for example, sticking Mo Salah high up the pitch is going to leave you a little bit vulnerable defensively, but it's going to bring you however many goals he scored this season, 30 plus goals, then you just go, okay, I'll take that risk because the reward is there. If you're going to do that, you're going to leave your team vulnerable and you're going to get 20 goals out of a player, then that changes things, doesn't it? Because it makes that risk less worthwhile. The reward is less, therefore the risk is less worthwhile. So I don't think that, Bukayo Saka is the kind of guy that wants to play necessarily the Mo Salah role. I think obviously they play in the same position, but they play the role differently. I think Saka's just not 100% fit at the moment. I don't think what you saw from him the other night was because we did anything differently. Luis Enrique did a job on him. They absolutely focused on him from a defensive point of view, and they did their best to nullify him. But also, he didn't feel 100% fit to me, and that I think was part of the problem. What else have we got? Arsenal Forever says, Harry, you say the criticism is lazy and misguided, but we won no trophies for 5 years, 6 semi-finals, no goals. Also, the Tifo was lazy and shows us fans that the club don't care. When do you think Mikel Arteta should be sacked? Well, first of all, I don't think you should sack a manager that has turned your club around and has put you in a Champions League semi-final. You're now crying about the Champions League semi-final, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Mikel Arteta. So I don't even want to discuss the prospect of him being sacked now. That is really poor, in my opinion. I say the criticism is lazy and misguided. Obviously, you're referring to the title of the episode, and that's fine. But when I say it's lazy and misguided, I'm not talking about criticism of how we played or criticism of how we set up tactically. I think, as I've said already in the pod, all of that is justified and valid. And if that's people's opinions, no problem. It's my opinion too. I've shared that with you guys. But I think when you start pointing fingers at the fans, that's when it's become lazy. And that's when it's clear that people are playing a game and looking for cheap clicks. When I say misguided, I'm talking about, again, the pointing of the finger at the fans. It's nothing to do with the fans. It's a nonsense. The Tifo was poor. I've said that 100 times. And I think they could do more. But I don't think it's because the club don't care. I think I'd much rather the club focused on being competitive than putting on fancy displays. I said my piece on it because it was a big talking point post-game. And when I put out a post after the match, like shortly after the match, an hour after the match, and I woke up in the morning to have a look at what some of the common themes were and questions were, there was so many related to that Tifo that I felt I had to discuss it. But I never said that stuff and came away from it thinking, oh man, this is the biggest story and this is going to dominate the day's coverage of Arsenal's game against PSG last night. No. So why have we got to that stage? It's mad. It's mad. What else have we got in the chat? Halo says, Harry, do you realize how close Arsenal are to the promised land? One good striker for next season, and Arsenal might have a day as they did at Anfield the other day. Yeah, look, we're not far off. We're not far off. The fact that we're in the semi-final says a lot about how we've come forward. But obviously, we want to get through it, right? But I do think that in the cold light of day, when the dust settles, let's say worst case scenario, we don't get through on Wednesday night and we end up narrowly crashing out. We narrowly lose to Paris Saint-Germain and PSG go on and win the competition, which they quite easily could. I was really impressed with Barcelona yesterday. Really impressed with Barcelona yesterday. But I don't think they're quite as balanced as PSG. I don't think they're as good off the ball. I don't think they're as good defensively, right? So if they were to meet PSG in the final, I know Lamine Yamal's special, and I know, they've got those superb players, but I would probably make PSG slight favorites, okay? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You might agree with that. You might not. Whatever. I think in the cold light of day, when you look back at our season, you will say, okay, we didn't win anything, which given where we finished last season is a disappointment and is a frustration. But when you go to cross that line with regards to the criticism, when you go from sort of disappointment to anger, which a lot of our fans enjoyed doing for whatever reason, there should be a barrier there that stops you. There should be the fact that we made the Champions League semi-final, not necessarily quelling all of your criticism or putting you in a place where, you refuse to criticize unequivocally, but it should be a barrier. It should be a pushback that says, hold on a minute. For all the rubbish that we saw this season, and there have been some really bad performances and dreadful ones, actually, we made the last four of Europe's premier competition. If this competition was easy to win, then there wouldn't be that value in making the semi-final. We watched two stunning teams go toe-to-toe last night, Barcelona and Inter. PSG have blown so many of us away when watching them over the course of the knockout stages of this Champions League competition. They've been unbelievable. The best teams make the last four more often than not. Do you get anomalies in there? Of course you do, like all cup competitions. But generally, top teams make the Champions League semi-final. And so I'm not saying that, that means that you have to completely ignore what happened in the league or, you have to shy away from any criticism. But what I am saying is that it's a good point in our season. The fact that we've got here right now, nobody's going to see that because when you're in the heat of the moment, you're desperate to get over the line and you're desperate to achieve. But if I'm analyzing us at the end of the season, which I always do, I do analyze it in different sections, right? So I go, right, domestically, what did we do? Well, we didn't win the league, which I felt we probably should have. We got to the semi-finals of the League Cup. We went out really early in the FA Cup. So domestically, it's not been a great season, okay? The semi-final in the Carabao Cup is a positive, but that doesn't outweigh the failure in the league and the failure in the FA Cup, okay? Fine. So I look at the domestic campaign in one way. Then I look at the European thing. And last season, I felt massively underwhelmed when we went out against Bayern Munich. Not because we lost to Bayern Munich, they're a superb team, but because I felt we didn't give a great account of ourselves. We could have given more. And for me, the quarterfinal wasn't deep enough in the competition for me to go, right, regardless of what happens beyond, we've done well in this competition. The semi-final is certainly that, though. The semi-final is certainly a phase in the competition where if you get there, you have to acknowledge that you had a decent, at the very least, European campaign. So that's when that's where I'm at. Okay, let's take a few more of your comments before we wrap up. Footy Corner TV says, as a season ticket holder, unfortunately, I disagree. Let me know exactly what it is that you disagree with so we can have a good debate. He says, the club give our tickets to YouTubers from other clubs as they really don't seem to care at all. No, look, let's be honest and fair about this, okay? You will see YouTubers at games involving clubs that they don't support, not because Arsenal Football Club actively go and hunt these people down and give them tickets to the matches. That's not how it works. Okay. I've done things like this before. I've gone to games as an influencer. I mean, I don't know who the hell I influence, but I have done it. I went to Porto last season against Barcelona as an influencer. I've been to other games. This is how it works, okay? So in order to generate revenue and to maximize the revenue, and this is not me defending the club before people start. This is me just explaining how the whole influencer world works, okay? So as a football club, you want to generate and maximize your revenues as much as you possibly can. And a massive part of that is brand deals, okay? So, for example, when I went to Porto, I went for New Balance, right? New Balance were launching something. They wanted to get some people in that could make an article, that could create some content, that could put that out, that would in turn promote what it was that they were promoting, right? So they give these tickets to the brands. Now, that is part of the deal that sees the brand sponsor the club and invest money in it. Now, then the brands, what they do to try and increase their reach is they go, right, we want to bring some content creators along that can make us content that, you know, means that our stuff gets seen by a much wider ranging audience. And so they bring in influencers. Last season, at the end of the season, when the campaign finished, there was a football tournament taking place on the Emirates Stadium pitch. And there was a fan token company, Socios.com, you probably heard of them, that were doing a sort of a day for those that had entered this competition and won it, where they got to play a tournament on the pitch and all the rest of it, right? And I was invited down by Socios to basically film some of it, to present to camera some of it, to interview Ray Parlour, who was there on the day. That was for Socios. That wasn't Arsenal doing that for me. That was Socios, the brand, in sponsoring the club and in, you know, putting money into the club and creating a revenue stream for the club. They get given something back. Now, what they choose to do with it is up to them. They might give it to clients, they might whatever, but a lot of them go down the route of bringing an influencer in because they think that's going to amplify whatever their message is. So it's not Arsenal going, let's take the ticket away from a loyal fan and give it to some influencer. No, that's not how it works. Money makes the world go round, and that is the way these things occur. Salah Hadeen says, I think it is a lazy assessment to look at only the cup games, neglecting performance in the domestic league. Thoughts? I agree. I think when you conduct an analysis, you have to conduct an all-round and thorough analysis rather than, just looking at it very basically. Like Man United won a trophy last season and they had to sack Erik ten Hag just months later because they were in the worst place they've been in decades. So I agree that it's not just about trophies, but it certainly puts a gloss on it if it's one of the major ones, like a Champions League or a Premier League. I'm not saying that if we win the Champions League, I'm going to sit there and completely excuse our domestic campaign or what we did in the league, because I think we've got a fair bit to answer for in terms of how our performance has dropped off. Do I think there were mitigating circumstances? For sure. But I still think we could have done more. And the way our title challenge faded was disappointing, regardless of the injuries and the problems that we had. So I'm not saying that it would excuse it, but the outlook on the season would be very, very different if we were crowned champions of Europe than if it's not. Surely you can see that. Okay, I'm going to take one more question before I sign out. I want to go and enjoy the sunshine. I've got to be honest, before I head off to work this afternoon. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're new and if you're listening to us on audio, please do leave us a review as well. That really, really helps. Can we get a few more likes on the board? Another 50 would be great before we wrap up the live stream. Right, let's take this one from Jid, who says, do you think fans are overly entitled? We have gone to the semi-finals of the Champions League and are second, having had one of our worst injury seasons in recent history because squad players stepped up. So how are fans claiming with straight faces that we don't have depth? What does depth look like to them, having top 4 quality players on our bench? It's when you frame it like that, it's a good point. And I do think that sections of our fan base are overly entitled. Yes. And this is where I'm always like banging the drum of enjoy it. Like a Champions League semi-final doesn't come around all the time. Not for us anyway. The last one, as we keep saying, was 08-09. So we've waited 16 odd years for this to come around again. Here it is. And rather than enjoying it, people want to look at it through this entitled lens and demand that we do something that isn't as simple as they believe it is. It would be amazing if we got through. We all want us to get through. And we're all desperate for that to happen right now. So emotions are running high. And that comes through in some of our analysis and some of our opinions. But looking back with hindsight, we will say we made 2 Champions League semi-finals since 08-09, which for a club of our size isn't good enough. If we then go make it again next season, then that will again really highlight, won't it, the progress that we've made under Mikel Arteta and the journey that we've been on. So you're right. You know, I think we're frustrated because we wanted so much more in terms of the league. But if you told us 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that we were going to finish second in 3 consecutive seasons, I think people would have laughed at you. That's how far off this point we were. And so you need to remember that when getting angry, when getting frustrated, when going over the top in terms of your rants and your shouting and your crying and all the rest of it. I understand in the heat of the moment, emotions can run high. But I think as supporters, you know, we have a responsibility after at least 48 hours to start calming down a little bit and see things for what they actually are. Anyway, massive thank you to every single one of you for joining me on the pod. Really, really do appreciate it. Don't forget, like, subscribe, leave us a review, all of that brilliant stuff. Get involved in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Until the next episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, goodbye. Take care. Have a great day.